Okay, we're not on Facebook. Sometimes I have no idea why it works, why it doesn't work, but I'll be posting this on Facebook later this afternoon. So how is everyone today? Angelica, how are things in your part of the world down in Sao Paulo?
Thank you, Ian.
It's okay. Okay.
Lots of sunlight now. The forest fires are.
The big confusion with countries all over the world about Amazon.
Yeah.
But since the Amazon is now military area from Brazil with and they control the fire, and the United States sent some trying to help with the airplanes and something to
Okay.
to finish the fire. And now in the moment it's better.
Has this affected your ability to do inner work? Has it changed the focus of your inner work for the last week? Thinking about the planet, thinking about air and breathing and breath and mortality and
Yes, and later I'm thinking to change,
Yeah.
move my atelier and reduce my home and go to mountain and create a little village after all this selvagem, absurdo, selvagem, the human doing, and disturbing my work, my days, the frequency all over had a big influence on me.
I know for my live meeting that I have on Tuesday night, I started talking about this, and everyone went into such a state, not everyone, but it seemed like everyone went into such a state of identification and the emotions that came out, and they weren't detached, they weren't mindful, and, you know, like, let's pull back. You know, we just get into a state of panic and a state of concern about the planet and what we're doing to the planet, and just trying to get them to pull back into that, you know, state of detachment, into the state of mindful awareness. It was just like, as soon as we started talking about it, people just went into it. And, you know, we're too identified with this. Let's take a step back. Ian, how are things going down in Portland, Oregon? I say going down in Portland, Oregon, whereas for Angelica it would be going up in Portland, Oregon. But
yeah, things in Portland are pretty good. We had a couple hot days this week, up in the upper 90s. Had to cover the garden, had to take care of it. But other than that, pretty good week.
Cover the garden? Would they burn up or too hot or?
Yeah. You know, the leaves get all, plants just kind of wilt. And,
oh, okay.
not quite the Amazon. But,
not quite the Amazon. How's your inner work going?
Good question. I don't know how to answer. Something seems to be happening. But I'm not sure how to talk about it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Karen, how are? Yeah. That's okay. That's fine. Karen, how are things going in your part of the world, in Mexico?
Well, I've been without my group. We haven't met since the beginning of August, and I really missed that. I feel like being around people twice a week in the work is very valuable for me. We're going to start up this coming week tomorrow, which I'm really grateful. But I noticed this, I don't know what I'd call it, a paradoxical thing where I sit and I have a good sitting, and then for the rest of the day, I'm pretty much asleep. So I'm needing to get back to work with my company.
Well, why do you suppose that is? Normally a good sitting recharges us.
I know, that's what's so strange about this. I wouldn't say it's not recharging me, but I just don't seem to have the usual remembering myself more often. I just need to get pumped up with people.
Are you able to catch, at least after the fact, where you tend to go to sleep? You know, in the terms of waking sleep.
I definitely do, and I've noticed the strangest thing, which is I have a tendency to latch onto a word and then make it into a song lyric. But I've noticed that however many times that happens, that throws me into self-remembering. So that's a good, and it's such a weird little hook, but I'm very grateful for that. So the more I think of a song tune, the more I self-remember.
Okay. What about going to sleep? What, you know, they actually say doorways. Walking through a doorway has a profound subconscious effect on people. And we forget, you know, we're going from one room to another to do something. And the act of walking through a doorway makes us forget. And so trying to remember ourselves as we walk through doorways could be a good exercise. Have you noticed any particular activity that tends to lull you into sleep?
No, I would say just my general tendency to be lazy, confounded with a feeling that I need to be productive, causes a struggle. And then I guess I either go to sleep or wake up to it, but more often I go to sleep. So it's just a matter of trying to be more awake.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
I mean, Mr. Gurdjieff said it was important to do, but it's just as important to learn to not do. So doing and not doing, and trying to be productive all the time is doing. And, you know, not doing is, in a sense, the self-remembering. It's the letting go. It's the letting go of the thoughts, letting go of what we're identified with. Do you have a problem with that area? Just the not doing?
I have a hard time doing nothing. I don't know that that's the same as not doing. I think I need to figure out how to not do and be more comfortable with it because of a lifetime of having to do.
Yeah.
So that's a interesting direction for me to work on.
You know, I know some women who, from the moment they get up, because they've got to take care of the kids and get the kids off to school and go to work and do everything and then come back home and make dinner and get the kids to bed, and they seem to do it all. They spend their whole day doing. And, you know, when I say, do you spend any time not doing, they look at me kind of blankly. And go ahead.
I'm learning the not doing. I raised kids. I had lots of responsibilities, and now I have everything for me, time to myself. I only have to prepare one meal a day, and the rest of the time I'm able to not do. So I'm just having to learn how to not do. That's project, so to speak.
That's a big one too. Brian, how are things in Scottsdale, Arizona?
Everything's going really well. I'm actually, I've been looking forward to this class all week. You know, music is, it's one of the biggest parts of my life, and I've always had a really, always been really interested and, you know, fascinated with its effects. I think I kind of work in the field of, you can call it music therapy. I just think there's a lot of potential when it comes to the untapped potential with music for people's well-being.
I should say that I'm going to be talking about music next week.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine too.
There's a lot on music with Mr. Gurdjieff. The harmonium and the piano and the compositions. This week I'm going to focus on Ian's question, which is still related to the misuse of sexual energy. And so this is sort of the last little lingering bit of that topic. But,
okay.
Let me just share the screen. The fact that we have a physical body, we have an essence, and we're hopefully developing a real I. So we work for ourselves, we work for humanity, and we work for the earth herself. And Mr. Gurdjieff's vow, I wish to be, I can be, I have the right to be, I have the ability to be, I swear to myself that this will never be for my personal profit, but to help others. I wish to be, to help others. This is to be understood as a vow. So let's do J.G. Bennett's 60-point exercise. So we breathe in awareness and we breathe out tension. It's a very simple process. It's a part self-sensing exercise, and it's a part preparatory relaxation exercise. So looks like Hisham is joining us from Morocco. But let's just start by generally becoming aware of our body. Just in the most general terms, try to become aware of gravity. Try to become aware of that inner sense of balance. Try to become aware of the atmospheric pressure of the air around us. Try to become aware of the temperature of the air around us and the temperature inside our body. And then try to become aware of various sensations within the body, within your mouth, within your throat, within your esophagus, within your stomach, within your abdomen. Perhaps become aware of your bladder, your colon. Becoming aware generally inside the body, perhaps even aware of the expansion and contraction of your rib cage. And then become aware of your skin, the touch of clothing on your skin. Perhaps you can notice the difference between the weave of the cloth of your pants as opposed to your shirt. Perhaps you can become aware of jewelry you may be wearing. Perhaps you can become aware of the sensation of air touching your skin or the hair on your head. And then let's bring our awareness to the first point, to the crown of our head, and breathe in awareness and breathe out tension to the crown of our head. And then moving down to the right side of our forehead, breathing in awareness, breathing out tension. To our right eye, breathing in awareness, breathing out tension. The right side of our nose and face. Our right ear and the finer muscles in the right side of our head. The right side of our mouth and our jaw. Our right shoulder. Our right upper arm and elbow. Our right lower arm and wrist. the top of our right hand, our right thumb, our right index finger, middle finger, fourth finger, baby finger, the palm of our right hand, breathing in awareness and breathing out tension to the right side of our chest. The right side of our midriff, solar plexus, and abdomen. The right side of our upper back and right shoulder blade. The right side of our lower back. Our right hip and buttock. Our right upper leg and knee. Our right lower leg and ankle. The top of our right foot. Our right big toe. Our right second toe. Our right middle toe. Our right fourth toe. Our right baby toe. The bottom of our right foot. Now reversing this process and breathing in awareness and breathing out tension from the bottom of our left foot. Our left baby toe. Our left fourth toe. Our left middle toe. Our left second toe. Our left big toe. The top of our left foot. Our left ankle and lower leg. Our left knee and upper leg. Our left buttock and hip. The left side of our lower back. Our left shoulder blade and the left side of our upper back. The left side of our abdomen and midriff, solar plexus. The left side of our chest. The palm of our left hand. Our left baby finger. Our left fourth or ring finger. Our left middle finger. Our left index finger. Our left thumb. The top of our left hand. Our left wrist and lower arm. Our left elbow and upper arm. Our left shoulder. The left side of our neck and throat. The left side of our jaw and mouth. The finer muscles in the left side of our head and our left ear. The left side of our face and nose. Our left eye. The left side of our forehead. And finishing with the crown of our head. Now just allow your attention to rest for a moment and become aware of your breathing, allowing your breathing to follow its natural rhythm. And as you breathe in, pull your awareness up the left side of your body from the bottom of your foot to the crown of your head. And as you breathe out, send your awareness down the right side of your body from the crown of your head to the bottom of your foot. Breathing in and pulling your awareness up the left side and breathing out your awareness down the right side, following your own natural breath. Just allowing the energy to circulate up and then back down with each breath. And then allow your attention to rest. And we'll move into Mr. Gurdjieff's filling exercise. As a vessel fills with warm golden honey, allow your body to slowly fill with sensation. Starting with the bottom of your feet, sensing the bottom of your feet, and imagine filling with sensation up through your feet, up through your ankles, your lower legs, the middle part of your lower legs, your knees, up through your lower part of your upper leg, moving up through your upper leg, to your hips, and at your hips include your hands, filling with sensation from the bottom of your feet now up through the lower part of your torso, your lower arms, up to your midriff, your solar plexus, middle back, elbows, up through your upper arms, chest, upper back, all the way up to your shoulders, and then up through the bottom part of your neck, the middle part of your neck, to your upper neck, and then up through your head. Up level with your nose, then up level with your eyes and ears, up level with your forehead, and then to the very top of your head, filling your whole body with sensation, sensing your whole body from the bottom of your feet all the way to the top of your head, sensing your body as one organic whole. And then allow your attention to rest, and we'll finish with the collected state exercise. As the earth is surrounded by an atmosphere, so too are we surrounded by an atmosphere. Normally our atmosphere is dispersed, so collect it. Draw your atmosphere to you, perhaps a meter, meter and a half, 4 to 6 feet. Become aware of the boundary of your atmosphere. Keep it contained, collect it around you. Keep it tranquil, keep it still, keep it calm. And we do this through keeping our thoughts, our sensations, and our feelings calm. Keep it tranquil, collect it. Become aware of the border of your atmosphere. And in a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 3. And when I get to 3, breathe your atmosphere in. And then as you breathe out, imagine something remains. Some emanations remain that settle within. 1, 2, 3. Breathe your atmosphere in. And then as you breathe out, using your head brain and the imaginative faculty, imagine something remains. Something settles within you. And then silently in your mind, repeat after me. May results from this exercise be transubstantiated within me for my being. And then just slowly return. And as you do, try to maintain this organic awareness of your body as much as possible. This is something you should be striving to do throughout the day. When you're walking down the street, you should be present in your body walking. When you're sitting, you should be present sitting. When you go to the toilet, you should be present within your body. When you're eating, this is the first big step in terms of the development of the Kesdjan body. So it's very important to come back to our body, to this sensation of self. So today I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. Ian's question. So, I mean, it was 2 weeks ago rather than last week. I have a question that might be a whole meeting in itself based on something from last week's meeting, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because it was part of the whole misuse of sexual energy. In one of the text quotes from last week, Mr. Gurdjieff, in discussing the sex center, talked about how the normal functioning of the sex center is hindered by buffers. So quoting Mr. Gurdjieff, they entirely bring it to naught. That is, they can stop its normal manifestation. That other centers take the energy C12 from the sex center and use it for themselves, meaning the sex center must then use other coarser energies to function. I believe what was being discussed was the effects of the sex center using other energies rather than just the other centers misusing C12. Again, quoting Mr. Gurdjieff, union with and the use of its energy by the thinking center creates far too great an imagination on the subject of sex, and in addition, a tendency to be satisfied with this imagination. Union with the emotional center creates sentimentality, or on the contrary, jealousy or cruelty. My question is, how do we work against these two tendencies in regards to the sex center? How do we have a proper amount of imagination on the subject of sex? How do we not be satisfied with that imagination? How do we learn to recognize and avoid sentimentality, jealousy, cruelty in the matters of sex? Would this involve doing something to lessen the buffers on the sex center so that it can use the energy proper to it, rather than how to use C12 properly by mindfully sensing the body as we have been discussing? Is there any literature on how to get the sex center functioning properly, lessening its buffers, keeping it from running on coarser energies? Or if using C12 properly through mindfully sensing the body is how we begin to debuffer the sex center. Is there anything about ways to help correct the sex center, to use only the energy meant for it, and to keep the other coarser energies out of it? Real tough question, Ian. I've put a lot of thought into this question, a lot of energy. I'm not even sure if I have correct answers or whatever, but let's go to the original quote. Speaking in general, this is In Search of the Miraculous. Speaking in general, what is the most correct form of life in this connection from the point of view of the work? And Mr. Gurdjieff replies, it is impossible to say. I repeat that while a man does not know, it is better for him not to attempt anything until he has a new and exact knowledge. It will be quite enough if his life is guided by the usual rules and principles. If a man begins to theorize and invent in this sphere, it will lead to nothing except psychopathy. But it must again be remembered that only a person who is completely normal as regards sex has any chance in the work. Any kind of originality, strange tastes, strange desires, or on the other hand, fears, constantly working buffers, must be destroyed from the very beginning. Modern education and modern life create an enormous number of sexual psychopaths. They have no chance at all in the work. This is the abuse of sex. It is necessary further to remember that the sex center works with hydrogen 12. This means that it is stronger and quicker than all other centers. Sex, in fact, governs all other centers. The only thing in ordinary circumstances, that is, when man has neither consciousness or will, that holds the sex center in submission, is buffers. Buffers can entirely bring it to naught. That is, they can stop its normal manifestation, but they cannot destroy its energy. The energy remains and passes over to other centers, finding expression for itself through them. In other words, the other centers rob the sex center of the energy which it does not use itself, the energy of the sex center in the work of the thinking, emotional, and moving centers can be recognized by a particular taste, by a particular fervor, by a vehemence which the nature of the affair concerned does not call for. So there's a lot in this. So the sex center and the normal manifestation or the working of the sex center is held in place in most people by buffers. And he talks about the fact that our education naturally creates psychopaths in this area. This is from G.I. Gurdjieff, Paris Meetings, 1943. This following quote comes from that book. It's the transcripts that were made during wartime meetings when he was in Paris during the Nazi occupation. This is also found in other places. It's found, a version of this is not this exact quote, but a version of this is found in G.I. Gurdjieff talks, 1914 to 1931. It's a bit more elaborate than this one, but this one contains basically the same information. PL, I'm not sure who PL was, but why are most of the associations that interfere with work sexual associations? This question is subjective. It is not the same for everyone. It is an abnormality that is a consequence of childhood masturbation. But what is the connection between this and suffering? There is no trace of suffering here. So in terms of the question that he asked, Mr. Gurdjieff said there is no trace of suffering here. And a lot of people translated Mr. Gurdjieff's, whenever he used the word shit, they used the French word merde, but here it's translated into the English. Every man has 3 shits in him, which are produced and which must be eliminated. The first is the result of ordinary food and is eliminated naturally. That's the shit we flush down the toilet. This must be done every day, otherwise all sorts of sicknesses ensue. This is well known in medicine. In the same way, the second shit is eliminated through the sexual function. It is necessary for the health, for the equilibrium of the body. For some people, it is necessary to do this every day. For others, every week. For still others, every month or every 6 months. It is subjective. A third shit is produced from the third food, impressions. And waste from this food accumulates in the cerebellum. That's the very back part of our brain. It's responsible for spatial awareness and all sorts of things. Medicine is unaware of this, just as it is unaware of the important role that the important role of the appendix in digestion. This third type of shit is eliminated by the appropriate use of breathing. This is something I tell my clients, particularly those suffering from anxiety, that scientists have now determined that approximately 70% of the body's waste products are breathed out. They aren't flushed down the toilet, they're not sweated out, that the act of breathing out is incredibly detoxifying. It's how we get rid of a lot of the waste in our products, particularly a lot of the wastes in our blood. We breathe in air into our lungs, and the air, the oxygen is actually squeezed through, almost pushed through the lining in our lungs into our blood, and this causes the noxious gases in the blood to be squeezed out of the blood and through the lining in our lungs, and we breathe it out. And for people with anxiety, for instance, they're not breathing properly. They generally only breathe from the top part of their lungs, and they do not exhale properly. And so the adrenaline, the cortisol, the norepinephrine, all the anxiety-related chemicals in their bloodstream tends to build up. And this just creates a circular loop. It makes them feel more anxious, and they don't breathe properly. And so a big part of dealing with anxiety is learning to breathe out properly. And here Mr. Gurdjieff is talking about how the food that we receive through our impressions, our eyes, ears, the olfactory receptors in our nose, our taste buds, that this information, all of this coming in, there's a detoxification that's also involved, and we eliminate this through breathing out. But he also talks about the sexual function as being eliminated through the sexual act. Now here, one must not mix sex with feeling. So this is mixing sex with the emotional center, feeding the emotional center with that energy that's supposed to be used by the sex center, and then this prevents the sex center from operating with its own energy, and so it becomes coarser. It's not quite as refined. So one must not mix sex with feeling. Sometimes it is abnormal to bring them together. The sexual act is a function. One can look at it as being outside of oneself, while love is interior. And here is an aside, if you've ever read Gurdjieff and the Women of the Rope, the transcripts of the various meetings that he had with a group of women in Paris, starting around 1935 and going up to just the pre-Second World War. He talks about exterior, interior. Here, this provides a bit of a definition and a bit of an understanding of what he means, and there are times in that book he talks about how our exterior must make contact with our interior. So one can look at it as being outside of oneself. So sex is exterior, while love is interior. Love is love. It does not need sex. It may be felt for a person of the same sex, even for an animal, and the sexual function has nothing to do with it. I love my children deeply. I love my sister. I love members of my family. I love my animals. It's not a sexual feeling. So what he's talking about is love is something that's interior, and it doesn't necessarily have to be aligned with sexuality. Now here he says sometimes it is normal to bring them together. This corresponds with one of the aspects of love. It is easier to love in this way, but at the same time, it is difficult to remain impartial as love demands. But if one considers the sexual function as being necessary medically, why would one love a remedy or a medicine? Now, as I talked about last week, let me see if I can just quickly pull this up where I had it. Maybe I can't. Where he talked about the different levels of love. Love of polarity, love of, here it is. I'll just stop sharing this. So conscious love evokes the same in response. Emotional love evokes the opposite. Physical love depends on type and polarity. These are not three different types of love. These are three different levels of love. The physical love, depending on type and polarity, is the love that we experience in World 48. Our body is our planetary body. Our body is a manifestation of World 48. We exist in our body. We do not exist just in our essence or just in our real I. Our body is a very real and important component of ourself. Emotional love, which is the love of essence, the love in World 24, the self-reflective, personally conscious realm, emotional love evokes the opposite. So that mindful realm of love, love can flip into hate, and the real strong mindful emotions, how could they do that to me? How could they betray me and whatever? And then the conscious love of hydrogen 12. Now, you can't just live in the realm of 12 and not exist in the realm of 24 or the realm of 48. So these are all connected. Sometimes it's normal to bring them together. This corresponds with one of the aspects of love. It is easier to love in this way, but at the same time, it is difficult to remain impartial as love demands. And impartiality is a quality of the real I. It's a quality of World 12, of the world of conscious awareness, of the angelic realm, of the realm of the awakened being. Impartiality, objectivity. But if one considers the sexual function as being necessary medically, why would one love a remedy, a medicine? In the beginning, the sexual act was only meant to be used for the purpose of reproducing the species. But little by little, man made it a source of pleasure. It was meant to be a sacred act. Let us hope that if Ashiata Shaimesh establishes his order on earth once more, it will again become a sacred act. One must know that this divine seed, sperm, has another purpose, to form a second body within us. So the first body we form within us is our Kesdjan body, and the second body he called the higher being body. Hence the saying, blessed is he who knows how to use Exio Hera Hari for the transformation of his being. And that's the word that he used in Beelzebub Tales when he described sperm and whatnot. Woe to him who uses it in a one-sided manner. So a lot of information there in terms of sexuality is a function. Sexuality, we eliminate toxins from our body through sexuality. And it doesn't necessarily have to be linked with love. It doesn't necessarily have to have that connotation. But if you look deeply into that quote, he's also not saying it's completely abnormal to link the two. But the jealousy, the rage, the upset, when that begins to enter the equation, something is going wrong. Now, another thing that we need to look at, that we need to understand, is what a buffer is. If we go back to this quote from In Search of the Miraculous, sex in fact governs all other centers. The only thing in ordinary circumstances, that is, when a man has neither consciousness nor will, that holds the sex center in submission, is buffers. Buffers can entirely bring it to naught. That is, they can stop its normal manifestation, but they cannot destroy its energy. The energy remains and passes over to other centers, finding expression for itself through them. In other words, the other centers rob the sex center of the energy which it does not use itself. The energy of the sex center and the work of the thinking and emotional centers is recognized by a particular vehemence. So this is also important to understand what a buffer is. There stands behind you, and this comes from In Search of the Miraculous. There stands behind you many years of a wrong and stupid life, of indulgences in every kind of weakness, of shutting your eyes to your own errors, of striving to avoid all unpleasant truths, of constant lying to yourself, of self-justification, of blaming others, and so on. All of this cannot help affecting the machine. The machine is dirty. In places it is rusty. And in some places, artificial appliances have been formed, the necessity for which has been created by its own wrong way of working. These artificial appliances will now interfere very much with all your good intentions. They are called buffers. Buffer is a term which requires special explanation. We know what buffers on railway carriages are. They are the contrivances which lessen the shock when carriages or trucks strike one another. If there were no buffers, the shock of one carriage against the other would be very unpleasant and dangerous. Buffers soften the results of these shocks and render them unnoticeable and imperceptible. Exactly the same way appliances are to be found within man. They are created not by nature, but by man himself, although involuntarily. The cause of their appearance is the existence in man of many contradictions. Contradictions of opinions, feelings, sympathy, words, and actions. If a man throughout the whole of his life were to feel all the contradictions that are within him, he could not live and act as calmly as he lives and acts now. He would have constant friction, constant unrest. We fail to see how contradictory and hostile the different eyes of our personality are to one another. If a man were to feel all of these contradictions, he would feel what he really is. He would feel that he is mad. It is not pleasant to anyone to feel that he is mad. Moreover, a thought such as this deprives a man of self-confidence, weakens his energy, deprives him of self-respect. Somehow or other, he must master this thought or banish it. He must either destroy contradictions or cease to see and feel them. A man cannot destroy contradictions, but if buffers are created in him, he can cease to feel them, and he will not feel the impact from the clash of contradictory views, contradictory emotions, contradictory words. Buffers are created slowly and gradually. Very many buffers are created artificially through education. Others are created under the hypnotic influence of all surrounding life. A man is surrounded by people who live, speak, think, and feel by means of buffers. Imitating them in their opinion, actions, and words, a man involuntarily creates similar buffers in himself. Buffers make a man's life more easy. It is very hard to live without buffers, but they keep man from the possibility of inner development because buffers are made to lessen the shocks, and it is only shocks that can lead a man out of the state in which he lives, that is, weaken him. Buffers lull a man to sleep, give him the agreeable and peaceful sensation that all will be well, that no contradictions exist, and that he can sleep in peace. Buffers are appliances by means of which a man can always be in the right. Buffers help a man not to feel his conscience. And here I should point out, I believe that conscience is a manifestation of World 12. So buffers lock us up and they allow us to sleep. They are the chief means, the chief mechanism that keeps us asleep. Continuing in search of the miraculous a little later. Fortunately for man, that is, for his peace and for his sleep, this state of conscience is very rare. From early childhood, buffers begin to grow and strengthen in him, taking from him the possibility of seeing his inner contradictions, and therefore, for him, there is no danger whatever of a sudden awakening. Awakening is possible only for those who seek it and want it, for those who are ready to struggle with themselves and work on themselves for a very long time and very persistently in order to attain it. For this, it is necessary to destroy buffers, that is, to go out and meet all those inner sufferings which are connected with the sensations of contradictions. Moreover, the destruction of buffers in itself requires very long work, and a man must agree to this work, realizing that the result of his work will be every possible discomfort and suffering from the awakening of his conscience. So here, buffers make life easy. Buffers keep us in a state of sleep. Buffers make life tolerable. Buffers prevent us from seeing our own contradictions. I can think of that quote in the Bible where Jesus said, you know, you can see the mote or the log in thy brother's eye, but not in your own. So we can see these contradictions in other people, but it prevents us from seeing all of the contradictory eyes that we have within us, and they keep us asleep. If our buffers were removed, we would be overwhelmed at the contradictory nature of certain eyes. To me, this is how certain evangelical Christians can, for instance, support Donald Trump while claiming that they are following the teachings of Christ. They have these buffers in them. Why someone walks around generally thinking they're a good person, but they can be very mean to people. They can be very nasty. They can be very hurtful, very sarcastic. And yet they have this illusion, this belief that they are good, moral, upright, upstanding individuals. Mr. Gurdjieff said morality is often composed of buffers. So buffers keep us asleep. And for a normal person, they're absolutely indispensable, because if they were ever removed, they could go insane by becoming aware of all of their contradictions. And to remove a buffer requires an immense amount of suffering. And we don't remove all of them. We start and we remove little ones. And this is where group work helps. This is where other people help. They can show us things about ourselves that we do not want to see. Loved ones often can see our chief fault better than we can. You know, they put up with us day in and day out. They know our weaknesses. They know our foibles. They've learned how to overlook them. And often if you ask people who are closest to you, what are my biggest weaknesses? Where do you see my biggest hypocrisy? And hypocrisy is associated with buffers because we're all hypocrites. And where do you see my biggest hypocrisy? And if you're willing to listen to them, they will tell you. Group work as well allows us to see this, because we can see contradictions in other people far more readily than we can see within ourselves. So continuing, in the life of an ordinary man, truth and falsehood have no moral value of any kind, because a man can never keep to one single truth. His truth changes. If for a certain time it does not change, it is simply because it is kept by buffers. And a man can never tell the truth. Sometimes it tells the truth. Sometimes it tells a lie. This is the mechanical machine-like self that he's referring to by it. Consequently, his truth and his falsehood have no value. Neither of them depends on him. Both of them depend on accident. And this is equally true when applied to a man's words, to his thoughts, his feelings, and to his conceptions of truth and falsehood. In order to understand the interrelation of truth and falsehood in a man, in life, a man must understand falsehood in himself, the constant, incessant lies he tells himself. These lies are created by buffers. In order to destroy the lies in oneself, as well as lies told unconsciously to others, buffers must be destroyed. But then a man cannot live without buffers. Buffers automatically control a man's actions, words, thoughts, and feelings. If buffers were to be destroyed, all control would disappear. A man cannot exist without control, even though it is only automatic control. Only a man who possesses will, that is conscious control, can live without buffers. Consequently, if a man begins to destroy buffers within himself, he must at the same time develop will. And here, it's also important to point out that will, in the Gurdjieffian sense of the term, is a world 12 phenomenon. It's on the realm of the sun in the ray of creation. It's on the realm of the angels in the diagram of all living things. And it's on the realm of the conscious or awakened person. So to destroy the buffers, we need to develop will. And if the buffers are destroyed before will is developed, it will lead to a man going insane. It is very important. It is a very important moment in the work on oneself is when a man begins to distinguish between his personality and his essence. A man's real I, his individuality, can grow only from his essence. And this is his higher being body. His essence is his Kesdran body. So it can be said that a man's individuality is his essence growing up mature. But in order to enable essence to grow up, it is first of all necessary to weaken the constant pressure of personality upon it, because the obstacles to growth of essence are contained in personality. If we take an average cultured man, we shall see that in the vast majority of cases, his personality is the active element in him, while his essence is the passive. Inner growth of a man cannot begin so long as this order of things remain. Personality must become passive, and essence must become active. This can happen only if buffers are removed or weakened, because buffers are the chief weapon by the help of which personality holds essence in subjugation. So, work on oneself in a very real way involves facing up to our own contradictions, facing up to our own hypocrisy. We speak of love and then we yell at a person, or we speak of love and then we spit scorn out for someone. You know, we pretend we have all of these ideals, but we don't really live them. And when we flip into the negative state, where we're not manifesting those ideals, what prevents us from seeing them and seeing that contradictions, you know, are our buffers. Now, going back to other things I've talked about in previous meetings, you know, there's the law of accident. People in World 48, the man-machine is ruled by the law of accident. But as we step up into the realm of personal consciousness, of mindful awareness, as we step up into World 24, we begin to become subject to fate. Fate is better than accident, only in the sense that it is possible to take it into account. It is possible to know beforehand. It is possible to prepare for what is ahead. In regard to accident, one can know nothing, but fate can also be unpleasant or difficult. In this event, however, there are means for isolating oneself from one's fate. The first step towards this consists in getting away from general laws. Just as there is individual accident, so is there general or collective accident. In the same way as there is individual fate, there is general or collective fate. Collective accident and collective fate are governed by general laws. If a man wishes to create individuality of his own, he must first free himself from general laws. General laws are by no means all obligatory for man. He can free himself from many of them if he frees himself from buffers and from imagination. All this is connected with liberation from personality. Personality feeds on imagination and falsehood. If the falsehood in which man lives is decreased and imagination is decreased, personality very soon weakens, and a man begins to be controlled either by fate or by a line of work which is in its turn controlled by another man's will. This will lead him until a will of his own has been formed, capable of withstanding both accident and, when necessary, fate. there's a lot to digest in all of this. Buffers keep our sexuality, they keep sex sort of in chains. Buffers are what prevent us from awakening. And without buffers, we would go insane. Buffers are what prevents us from experiencing conscience. And so we have so many false things, for instance, connected with sexuality. In the West, you know, sexuality and love go together. And Mr. Gurdjieff didn't say that this was necessarily wrong. He quite often encouraged his students to get married. And, you know, he talked to them about how their marriage and their relationship could be like a sacred vessel in which they could grow. But there are a lot of negative connotations in terms of marriage, you know, a lot of envy, a lot of jealousy, a lot of anger that can also arise. And when these negative emotions kind of get associated with sexuality, it can become stifling. I know someone who has a long distance relationship, and he lives here in Toronto. His girlfriend lives in Mexico City. They get together 4, 5, 6 times a year, and his girlfriend is constantly accusing him of infidelity, of flirting with other women, of being unfaithful to him. Somehow in this, the trust is gone, the acceptance, and there's a lot of projection of her weakness, of her fears into the relationship. Rather than, you know, a mutuality, rather than a love, and rather than just accepting that they have a real strong, powerful connection. You know, there's all of this imagination that she has in connection with the relationship. And this happens a lot. The whole envy, the jealousy, I saw you looking at him, I saw you looking at her. All of this, you know, kind of gets bound. And I remember talking about this with this friend of mine, and I said, you know, does she have issues of jealousy in her family? Have there been issues of infidelity? Has she been unfaithful? Is this really a projection coming from her world onto him? And, you know, he'd never looked at it that way. These were buffers that she had somehow in place that were distorting and preventing her from seeing some kind of a contradiction, some kind of a problem. And it's not just, you know, in terms of the sexual energy, even though in a sense it is. You know, when we think of, for instance, the evangelical Christians viewing Donald Trump as a manifestation of King Cyrus, and so they excuse all of his behavior. And these were the same people who 10 years ago said that a president's life and his moral values and the way he lived was one of the most important qualities that a president could embody. And then they flip over and they do not see their hypocrisy. The rest of us see their hypocrisy. Their children see their hypocrisy. And, you know, the children of evangelicals are leaving their churches because of the hypocrisy they see. And that hypocrisy is held in place by buffers. The whole morality, for instance, of, you know, the evangelical Christian sexuality, you know, the purity rings and a father giving his daughter away to the husband, And, there's a lot of hypocrisy in that. There was just recently an evangelical Christian who wrote a book back in the late 90s about you shouldn't date, has renounced it all. He's realized the tremendous pain and burden that he's inflicted on his community as a result of taking that rigid stance. And these things are held in place by buffers. And so if you have jealousy entering into your relationship, if there's possessiveness, if there's envy, these things shouldn't be part of a normal, healthy sexual relationship. If your partner is very controlling, if they're very jealous, if they're either you've got to look at yourself and you've got to look at your own hypocrisy, how when you're with them you're saying one thing and when you're away from them you're flirting with everyone else. Or you have to examine, what is it within them? What buffers within them are creating that? Was it part of their wrong education? Did their father cheat on their mother? Was there something going on? Sort of looking at, these different manifestations, bringing it back to buffers, understanding that not only do other people have buffers, and they particularly have a lot of buffers around sexuality, around their own sexuality, around behavior that's expected and not expected. Billy Graham's rule where you can't be in a room with another woman, taken to its extreme, becomes quite ridiculous. That's just a way of keeping women in subjugation, preventing them from having mentors, preventing them from doing certain things, because men are just, and these are held in place by buffers, by people unable and unwilling to see the contradictory and hypocritical nature of their own selves. And so, we can talk about this externally, looking at other people, but we have to bring it back into ourselves. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago, during Lent, I gave myself an exercise. Pardon my French. I created a recording where I had, I am a shithead, I am an asshole, and I am a scumbag. And I looped around. And whenever the shithead, I would think of all the nasty thoughts I've had, all of the ways I've hurt people with my mind. When I said I'm an asshole, I did this for my body. All of the ways I physically hurt people, all of the physical things that I've done that I shouldn't have done. And then, when I came up to I am a scumbag, I thought of all of the emotional things. And now I didn't create a whole list, but as I listened to this, more and more and more memories of things that I had done, where I had hurt other people, where I had hurt them with my thoughts, with my words, where I hurt them with my actions, where I had hurt them with my feelings. More and more of this came up, and I did this for 6 weeks, and it was such a painful exercise to come face to face with so much hypocrisy within myself, to come face to face thinking that I'm a good person, that I'm a moral person, that I help people, and to realize all of the times in my life when I hurt people, when I went against this. And this is just a small part of remorse of conscience. And I've talked about remorse of conscience in other meetings. And remorse of conscience is how we melt our buffers down. It's walking a mile in someone else's moccasins. One of the most advanced forms of remorse of conscience is to enter into another person's reality, to see the world through their eyes, and to experience the pain that we caused them. I can think of one time when I was 19 years old and I just screamed at my dad. And what I said was so hurtful, so mean, so unjustified. But in that moment, I felt morally indignant and I felt justified. And I walked away saying, I'm glad I said those things. And, you know, my buffers were in place. And I've gone and I've re-experienced that moment through his eyes, putting myself into the state of remorse of conscience, which I've talked about in previous meetings, re-experiencing that, realizing the hurt, the pain, you know, that I wasn't such a good person, that I wasn't such a good son, and doing that, you know, for various points in our life, reliving that from their perspective, seeing that we're not completely noble and upright and virtuous and any of these things. It's very, very painful. And, you know, one of those quotes, Mr. Gurdjieff said that we can only remove buffers through tremendous suffering. They help to keep us asleep. And in other words, awakening is not easy. Awakening requires a tremendous suffering, a tremendous awareness of our inconsistencies, of our bad behavior, of how we've hurt other people, of how we're truly and deeply hypocrites, and looking into the face of our own hypocrisy. And so a lot of this is associated with sex, with sexuality. You know, a lot of those negative emotions have no place in a proper sexual relationship. We can have, you know, pair bonding, having love, having an objective sense of love for another person, keeping our sexuality contained in that vessel of that relationship. But it's when the envy, the jealousy, the lies, the distortions enter into it that those are maintained, empowered, held in place by buffers, and that's where things begin to go wrong. Ian, I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I have. Okay.
I mean, there's a lot in there to digest. Like, I'm probably going to have to watch this 1 or 2 or 3 or how many times, but
okay.
I sense threads in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Okay, it's now noon. Thank you for being here. I guess we lost Angelica. So take care. And next week, Brian, music. And I can share with you some of Mr. Gurdjieff's music and stuff as well. Okay, everyone, take care. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.